Hello, everybody. Faithful Slave back again, talking about some crazy stuff. Today, I wanted to talk about some religious truths, about having a little walk. Are there any religious truths? You've kind of seen me be sort of snarky towards the concept of religion, but I think it's completely possible. Some religions, they can't be wrong all the time, right? I'm going to start off the video by saying some things that are pretty controversial. Have you ever thought about how Jesus was kind of a hippie? Just stay with me here. Jesus had a lot more in common with shamans and, say, Buddhists or people who worship nature than you might think, which you're probably already turning the live stream off. No, that's impossible. Shut up, Parker. You're being esoteric again. But no, think about it. In the book of Luke, it talks about how Jesus would often retreat to the wilderness to pray. It's interesting. Why did he need to go to the wilderness to pray? Was it just the solitude he was seeking? You can have solitude without going into the wilderness. But not only that, but after Jesus was baptized, it says that he fasted in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. How many Christians do you know of who have ever done that? None. But there are a lot of examples of people in Eastern religion who've done that. Oh, there's a helicopter. Cool. You're ruining my live stream, man. Get out of here. It's all right. But yeah, think about that. Think about an Eastern religion. People often would go on these retreats and fast in the wilderness. The wilderness is a big part of a lot of Eastern religions, but not only that, think about how Native Americans have what's called vision quests, where same thing, they fast in the desert. They go on walks where they meditate and they don't eat, walk out into the wilderness, and they actually hallucinate, because you can actually hallucinate from depriving your body of certain things it needs to function well, such as food, water, being in harsh conditions like the sun for a long time, which, you can discount hallucinations as being just some unbeneficiary thing, misfunction, like a malfunction in the brain. But you notice that these figures always came back from these experiences changed, presumably for the better, because they ended up being persuasive people who seem to have gained a new perspective on life. Something to think about, right? So I guess my first religious truth that I would recommend as potentially a thing is the fact that if you live minimally, if you put yourself with no veil, living outdoors per se, in nature, you can come away from an experience like that, if you do it long enough, changed, potentially for the better, gaining new perspective. This concept seems universally true because it's in a lot of different religious ideas around the world. Let me see. Okay, we got comments. What's up? Denise Hedberg says hi. Nearly Captured says hi. Hoodie says hi there. Hello, everybody. I've been talking about religious truths and how it may be surprising that Jesus did something that a lot of people in Eastern religion and Native Americans do, which is go out into the wilderness and pray and fast to gain new perspective or guide divine, God, whatever you want to call it, Brahman, which I think is interesting. And I'm kind of annoyed that Christians don't implement this in their worship. This was a big deal, you know. The devil tempted Jesus in the desert. Why did he need to go out into 40 days and 40 nights and fast? Is there something about doing this, being surrounded by nature, that's important to worship? Or is it just something that should just be thrown away like most Christians do? I mean, you could argue that maybe some churches will go out camping as a group. Yeah, okay, I guess, but like you never hear of them going and fasting and spending the entire time praying and meditating and pondering. That's pretty unheard of from Christian churches, as far as I'm aware. I've never heard of it. It's interesting how that's not been implemented in the Christian faith. In fact, quite the opposite. Most Christian churches will have banquets and gatherings where they serve a lot of food. So it's sort of the opposite. Dano Capilino says, hey, Happy New Year, faithful slave. Happy New Year. Can you guys hear me okay? How's my audio? Am I coming through loud and clear? I'm sure they will respond as soon as they catch up. So that kind of like there's other topics I want to bring up. Oh, they say, yep, they can hear me good. Cool. What are some other religious truths? Well, I think it's interesting that most religions, or I should say most cultures, have a story. Yeah, around the world, the Asians in Africa, Mesopotamia, the Greeks, they all have like flood myths. I'm not suggesting that the earth was at one time flooded necessarily, but through science we can take a look back and see that the earth was at one point or another a very different place, you know, whether it be global ice ages or back when a time when the world was predominantly covered in water. It's interesting, right? It's not necessarily untrue. If you look at the Mesopotamian culture, they have the story of Gilgamesh. They have a great flood story. And what's interesting to me is that Mesopotamia is the same area that Babylon eventually sprouted out of. And I believe the story of Gilgamesh predates the Hebrew Bible. Well, I know it predates the Hebrew Bible because the Bible wasn't put together as a one book and a canon until like the Roman time period. But what I mean is, I think perhaps the story of Gilgamesh predates the myths that ended up in the book of Genesis about the flood and everything. Maybe not. It's pretty hard to prove that, but even if it didn't influence the myth, the flood myth in the Bible, how cool is it that they have similar stories? Think about it. The Babylonians would have been very big on this idea of a great flood and Gilgamesh coming from the Mesopotamians, right? And from the Bible, we know that the Jews were once captive by the Babylonians. They were living together, dwelling together for quite some time. So you got to wonder, which was influenced by which? You know, did the Jews pick up on some of the myths of the Babylonians or the other way around? I feel like there's a lot of that was going on in ancient times. I think there was a lot of borrowing of mythos. Denise Hedberg says, I like different creation stories around the world. Me too. Oh wow, Hoodie says there's 3 million Muslims now in the UK. Yikes. Yeah, that is the fastest growing religion, which is freaking crazy. But yeah, I don't have a lot to say about that right now. I'm trying to stay on topic here. But so yeah, it is kind of a religious truth. One time the earth pretty much was all water, right? I kind of think that they got the whole flood story from something much more simple, though. I think it was just a way to explain why the oceans were so big. Honestly, I think it was as simple as that. Think about it. Like I picture this scene of a father and a son fishing off the coast of some country in ancient times, and the father's pulling in a big net full of fish, and the son's like, "Dad, what's the deal with all this water? I don't get it. Where the heck did all this water come from?" And then the father's like, "Oh, well, that's simple, son. You see, a long time ago, God was very angry with humans, and he proceeded to bring a deluge upon the earth and covered all the surface of the earth with water, and what little land there is today, it's just the parts that have dried off from that event." There you go. Question answered, problem solved. Let's move on. Oh, check this out. This is some graffiti out in the woods. This place I like to walk. It's really cool. Kids come out here and change it like once a month, I'd say. Show you some more stuff out here too. It's pretty cool. So yeah, I kind of think that that's where that came from. But do you guys have any ideas about this stuff? Mop Floyd says, "Arker. Hey, hoodie, we will be." Oh dear. What's up, Mop Floyd? So like another spiritual truth that you might consider, perhaps, is the idea that humans can have dealings with the gods, right? Okay, bear with me here. I don't literally mean that per se. I want to get into another myth that's shared by multiple cultures in ancient times, which is the Garden of Eden. The Mesopotamians also had a Garden of Eden story where basically man lived out in nature, ate with the beasts and the birds, but then because of woman, they decided to reject that life and start living more civilized by building houses and living a much more civilized, in a much more civilized way, right? But it talked about how there was a fruit that was eaten, and one of the old characters in this Mesopotamian story then wrestled with a divine serpent, which I don't know. I think that if you tried to duplicate a story with that many similarities today, it would be like plagiarism. You'd get like copyright infringement. There you have the idea of a man leaving nature because of woman, there being a struggle between a divine serpent and a fruit being eaten. That's exactly like the Garden of Eden story, which is pretty crazy. It's pretty wild. And what I think is kind of true about that, not necessarily that that's what happened, but in Africa, there is a shrub called iboga, and it produces fruit. And when you eat the iboga, when you chew on its roots, you have profound hallucinogenic, you have profound hallucinations. It's a psychedelic, basically. And a lot of the things that people see while under these states, can be very serpent-like. And I'll kind of briefly describe what I mean. So if you look at the scales of a snake, oftentimes they're colorful, and oftentimes they're patterned a certain way. And believe it or not, when you are in a hallucinogenic state, you can see colorful patterns that remarkably resemble the patterns on the scales of a snake. I'm connecting a lot of dots here that I'm surprised most people don't talk about. Mott Floyd says the Bible is like the Zeppelin back catalog. Great fun, but mostly borrowed from other writers. Yeah, I think that's probably pretty accurate. Somebody is asking, do you think World War III is on the way with Trump and Iran? No, I don't. Guys, come on. How many times have we been here before? How many times has there been a buzz story about something our political leaders are doing that could potentially lead to World War III? And what I've come to finally understand is that most of the time it's just being overhyped by the media. I mean, remember that your news channels, above anything else, want viewership. So what do you do when you want viewership? Well, you embellish things, you exaggerate things, you get people all worked up. I mean, just the fact that you asked that question on my channel, which is completely unrelated, means that it's got people concerned about it, right? I don't know. Maybe one day one of our leaders will do something that causes a World War III type scenario, but my personal opinion, our leaders have gotten used to a certain standard of living, a cushy standard of living where, you know, they're comfortable. And I don't think anyone really wants to push that button, you know, pull that trigger, because world wars, nobody wins. It can very easily topple all of our currencies and our economies, and we're back down to living like Jesus did. And that's something else I wanted to talk about. So I'm glad I kind of went full circle there. Jesus told people to sell all their belongings and follow him as he toured basically the deserts, the wilderness. They went from city to city, right? Living off the land, living a bare minimum lifestyle, right? That goes back to my first point. I think that if you want to be a more complete individual, that sort of a thing is very good for your psyche. It teaches you a lot about yourself and a lot about reality, quite honestly, what you can and can't endure. First of all, living that lifestyle will prepare you and make you a stronger person. You can endure more. And that's just common sense, right? I mean, anybody who's seen Castaway knows that if you go to a desert island, if you survive for a long period of time, you're going to be a lot stronger of an individual than you were when you worked for FedEx all your life and ate, you know, croissants every morning. Let's see. Hoodie says now it's just beer. Wow, crazy. Oh, Glass Ceiling says cool beard, dude. Thanks. I have been working on this beard for a while now. I used to have a really bad habit of picking at my facial hair. And I've finally gotten that down to the point where my beard can grow in. Those impulses, man, that humans have, they can be a real ass kicker, you know. But I think part of our reason to be here is to learn how to fight our impulses. I think it's a noble thing to try and do. But anyways, where was I? Denise Hedberg says, when I left the org when I was young, I did the Vision Quest thing, brought me full circle back to following Jesus. Well, you know, whatever works for you. Hey, Parker, did you ever read Watchmen? Are you talking about the comics? Like who's watching The Watchmen? Or are you talking about, oh, I think you're talking about, it's an old rock and roll thing, right? Or no? All right, you are talking about the comics. No, I didn't ever read it, but I saw the movie. It was pretty cool. Anyways, what was I talking about though? Oh yeah. So I'm not necessarily saying that everybody should go out and live in the woods. It's not really realistic, but I think that it's a common theme throughout the history of man for people who wanted to be more enlightened people, I guess, ended up doing it. And it seemed to resonate with people. So I think there's something to be said about that. I think I had another religious truth that I wanted to talk about. Things that I think religions sort of get right in a roundabout way, but I can't really remember. Oh well, I guess this is a pretty good place to stop the video anyway. Let's see. Yeah, all right. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I can't really think of anything else to talk about at the moment, unless you guys in the comments have something you want me to talk about or you want to discuss together. Sorry if the video quality is really bad. I don't have fancy technology anymore. I've been living that minimal lifestyle for about 6 months now. Half because of circumstances and half because of choice. And honestly, I wouldn't have traded it for the world. It's pretty remarkable. It's pretty remarkable, all the mental and physical breakthroughs that I've had while retreating to the wilderness. I tell you what, man, I've learned to not need like validation from people, and I don't really need to like hang out with people. When I'm feeling lonely now, I just like to go for walks in the woods, because honestly, as cliche and cheesy as it sounds, the forest is my friend. Yep. Yep, this is the video that's used against me. Parker's gone off the deep end. Oh boy. Get the straight jackets. Lock that man up immediately. But, oh well. It's not bad though, I tell you what. I've been witness to some really beautiful stuff, man. Like I come out on these walks and I've seen, I saw a buck probably 2 weeks ago. Usually I only see deer out here, you know, doe, female deer. But I actually, for once, saw a buck. He must have had at least 8 points. And he was running with the herd, and that was so freaking cool, because they always hide behind. They usually, you rarely see the bucks, because they're a lot more cautious. And so to be able to actually see a buck run past, probably not even like 30 feet from where I was sitting out here one day, that was really, really freaking cool. Yeah. All right, guys. Let's see what else we got in the comments. Mop Floyd says, "Are you walking the earth like Kung Fu?" Sure. Glass Ceiling is talking about either microdosing or full-on spiritual experience. I'm not sure what the question there is. I think that microdosing is a new thing that people are doing to treat depression. Mostly we're talking about psilocybin mushrooms. It's pretty effective. Mushrooms just make you feel good. At small doses, you just kind of feel just better for some reason. you don't, you know, trip like crazy and see all kinds of weird stuff and start babbling like a madman on small doses. You just sort of feel better. And a lot of people are doing that, but the full-on spiritual experiences are like the huge doses of magic mushrooms that are giving people the ability to do tremendous things like quit heroin addiction, quit smoking tobacco. Usually it's these large doses that trigger spiritual experiences that are able to do this in clinical studies, and that's what the data reflects anyway. But cool question. I think I answered it, maybe. L. Ron Hubbard says, come to Scientology. I don't know, man. Scientology is just too damn expensive. You know? Why the hell would I do that? You got to pay to like rise up in the ranks. You know, I don't have Tom Cruise's money. Don't think I'm going to be joining the old Scientology. Plus, like every example of a Scientologist out there is people who are clearly like batshit crazy. So no thanks. But I like doing these discussions. Ooh, I see deer right now. Yeah, you're not going to be able to see them at all, but I always see deer out here. It's awesome. Anyways, yeah, I like having these discussions. It's I'm a lot less nervous now because I don't really I don't really care about views or anything like that anymore. I'm not trying to like make the greatest YouTube video that's going to go viral across all platforms or anything anymore. So I can just kind of chat with you guys and be myself a little bit more. Even though I'd say I was probably always myself. But anyways. All right, so I guess I'm gonna go. What's the comment saying? All right, guys. Thanks for coming by. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll probably be ranting on the channel now and then when I think of something kind of interesting. So, see you next time. Faithful Slave, I'm out.